Hi, I'm Mike with bootsbybohemond.com, and welcome to Shop Night, where I make a gift for a deserving person in our community. This is part 4 of a series and the last part of making tall Cavalier boots for Mistress Brigitta. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make this little wonky piece, which then gets attached to all this big floppy paper, which is hard to show you, to make the tall upper boot. One reminder is she's going to be wearing her knee caps underneath, so we have to count for that. And at the end of this video, I will reveal the really cool boots that I gave Brigitta at the end in a cool video montage. Stay tuned. Support me by doing this. It'll allow me to make more videos for you. This is my completed upper, and the seam goes in the back over the heel point. And this is really difficult to work with because it's so huge for a Cavalier boot. So we're going to set that aside for a moment, and we're going to imagine that this is half of it, and the boot comes up. Our seam will be here. This is the center of the front boot. So we can imagine it like this. This is where it attaches to my vamp. And this is important because we'll notice that these curves do not match. If I were to start sewing here, the stitching would go here and the stitching would go here. But leather is pliable, and this is where this compass method of doing hole counts allows us to get these two completely different shaped leathers together to make the upper work and make a boot. So that's where this is. We're going to do one half of it, and then we're going to flip it back and forth on the big giant upper that I showed you a moment ago. So there's a couple of pieces of information that we need. That is, the vamp is a 5+2. That our heel is a 6 count up top, bottom as well, but it turns out up top as well. And those incorporated those distances in the math already. So all we need to do now is make our hole count match. And then of course we can verify with our E being 13¼ and we know from the vamp project that we've added an inch that we need to come in around 14¼ when we're done. So we're going to put the +2 centered, right? The vamp we know is 5+2. 1, 2, and 5. 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to do the heel, which we know is 6 holes from here to here, because we're only doing half. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2, 3, 4. And that's our 6. So this would be our heel piece. Now we want to verify that with E, and we know the E was 13¼ and we know that we added 1 inch. So it comes in at 7¼ which is 14½ So we have just a little bit of extra material, which is just fine. It's probably because I spread these out, but leather is pliable and we are pretty close to our E measurement. So we know that when we close this up, because this is the seam that runs up the back, the 6 hole will line up on the other side when we flip it. This is a old boot pattern which I have modified to fit Brigitta. So the important measurements that we need to make this upper work are E, which is again that circumference around the ankle to the instep, our G and H measurements, which G denotes the wideness or thickness of the calf where it's absolutely widest, and H is the distance of that calf around, or the circumference of that calf. G is the measurement up from the floor where that happened, and I've made a mark here on my pattern where that falls. J is important because that tells me how big and extra buckety, so it's a plus number, it's expressed as a plus. So it's +4 because she's going to be hiding knee cops under the boots and then wearing clothing over her armor and then putting the boots on over that. Then we're going to have our F measurement, which is the how tall the boot is from the top of the instep. And we're going to have I, how tall is the boot, or sorry, how big around is the boot at where her tall was. So I is the circumference of her leg at the height of 22. And again, the J measurement, which is expressed as a plus. Tight fitting boot is +2. A normal fitting boot for, casual wear and fighting and stuff is usually +3. And then of course, because she's putting knee caps underneath it, we're going to go +4. And this is what it looks out when it's all laid out. And you can see it doesn't really fit into frame. And this is where our piece comes. We're going to mark the holes or transfer the holes directly to the leather. We're not going to go ahead and put them in the paper. We can just use this little piece when we're marking holes in the leather. And we'll just flip it so that we get the same hole count here. This is the seam, which will go on the back of the heel piece and line up with this hole here. So this hole and this hole at the very end of these will actually get pushed together when you sew this up, and then it will count as this single hole while sewing. So let's talk about how I interpreted my measurements. So first of all, we have my E measurement is interpreted down here. You saw how I did it and it's done. So now we're going to move to G. This is where my G fell. So we have my H measurement. H was 16. So that means from edge to edge, I would want this to be 20 to fit that knee comp. I have an extra inch. That's not important. What's important is I have enough material or enough room. The next measurement we're going to go with is F. And I'm going to add my 3/8 seam allowance, and we can see the F falls at 22. And then up top here, we're going to do the I measurement, which also was 22, but then we're going to add the +4, so that's 26. And you can see I fall from edge to edge here, 26. The next question you might have is what happens if I'm not wearing this boot with a cop? Well, I have a different shape and I'm going to show it to you. If you're not wearing this boot with a cop, you could be using this shape. This is where I come in and I take out that extra material. You can see that I have used J+2 because that's an inch difference. I've come in for the knee to make that 16 also +2. So that's the extra difference for the comp. And so this is the shape for a boot that will not ever be worn with a knee comp. Of course, it's complex, and that's if you want that tight fitting boot look. I like folding over that extra material here around the knee and around the knee cop. I think that looks sexy. It's also how it was done in period, folding that material over and gartering it so the garter would be here. So that's how I've interpreted the measurements for the upper. These are the completed pair of boots I have made from the pattern you watched me make. So you can see we have these very lovely tall Cavalier boots. You know, when I view those boots with your eyes and not my own, they kind of look like ass. So I fixed that for you. Here's a video montage of Brigitta in her boots. You now know everything you need to make a pair of boots for yourself. Now, I learned this technique from Richard of Wolfswood, or Richard Jones, a number of years ago, and I have literally made almost 1,000 pairs of footwear with me and my team using these techniques. I need your help. Do this for me, please. It'll really help in me making more videos for you to watch. Now, if you like to see how the construction process of a boot actually goes, I have this video right here where it's a two-parter where I actually make a pair of boots and you get to see how all this stuff comes together on the leather and how it gets sewn together.